Tak ahoj a dobrý den všem. Já vás vítám u dalšího dílu našeho Heureka podcastu. Mé jméno je Tomáš Braverman a samozřejmě moje hobby je natáčet pro vás tyhle podcasty. Ale tak děláme to zdarma, tak se něčím musím živit, takže se živím tím, že vedu Heureka Group. Heureka Group všichni určitě znáte, jsme největší srovnávač cen a nákupní rádce v regionu střední a východní Evropy. Máme 23 milionů uživatelů, máme 45 000 obchodníků, máme 93% brand awareness atd. Pokud se chcete dozvědět víc, jukněte třeba na Heureka Group. By the way, si tak říkám, jak jsem mluvil o tom, že to je zdarma, tak tím, taky bych vám chtěl říct, že je fajn podcasty, který jsou třeba na Patreonu podporovat. Já sám podporuji mý oblíbený podcasty. My samozřejmě to děláme v Heurece, tak my podporovat nepotřebujeme, ale chtěl jsem vám jenom tak nějak vnuknout myšlenku, že je fajn vaše oblíbený podcasty začít podporovat. Jedna z těch platform je třeba Patreon. No, ale pojďme už k našemu podcastu a I'll switch to English now because we will have today's podcast in English. Because my guest actually, although he speaks Czech, he's been living in the Czech Republic for quite a long time now. But his first language is English, so I was thinking that perhaps it will be kind of more natural for him to express his thoughts in English. And I also think that you, our listeners and watchers, will also appreciate that actually it's in English and it's in the first language of our guest. And who's our guest? Our guest is the founder and the president of Zátiší Group, Sanjiv Suri. Sanjiv, thanks a lot for coming. I'm so looking forward to discussing with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Sanjiv, how is it actually with the languages? Because I know that in India, one of the official languages is English because it's a former English colony, right? But then there is also Hindi as a language. But I've heard that actually it's thousands and thousands of accents of Hindi, and actually you cannot understand one another. How is it? How did you actually speak with your parents at home and stuff like that?
Yeah, at home we were speaking Hindi or Punjabi, but I went to an English medium school. And India is a little bit like Europe. So we have 23 official languages, maybe 24 now. And there's about, not thousands and thousands, but there is about 382 or 83 dialects from different regions. So it's like saying Sweden or Greece. Different languages, but when you bring it all together, so that's what India is. It's not 550 million people, it's 1.4 billion nearly now. So,
but everybody speaks English, right, in India?
No, they don't. And I do not have the data on how many people do speak English or not. Sometimes the common language of communication is English, and sometimes it's Hindi, and sometimes it's another language. So it depends on where you are traveling. I guess similar to, when you would move around in Europe, there would be parts of Italy where people may not speak English, and there would be parts of Sweden where people may not speak English, etc., etc.
But so I would say more Indians speak English than Italians, right?
Probably, yes.
I mean, in percentage, not only in absolute numbers. But
just yes.
Yeah. But when you're at an office or something, do you speak English or Hindi there in India?
I guess it depends. It depends what the official language is and what the office is doing. So somewhere it could be English and somewhere it could be Hindi, or depending in the regions, another language.
But at a primary school, I guess learning English is one of the most important subjects, right?
Right. So you have English medium schools and Hindi medium schools, and then local language medium schools, where English is either only a language. So either you would go, for example, to a Czech medium school or an English medium school. And when you go into a Czech medium school, you would learn English on the side. And if you went to an English medium school, you would learn Czech on the side. So again, very similar to that. Only here you extrapolate to, 23 or 25 languages.
But and your parents, for example, speak English?
Yes. My parents, my mother was a double master's in Hindi and in philosophy. And she was the principal of a school.
Okay.
But a Hindi medium school. But a lot of the communication was done in Hindi, and a lot of the communication was done in English.
Tell us a little bit more about your roots, actually, in India.
This is a question very often asked, because now I've lived more in the Czech Republic than I had lived in India. So I was in India for the first 24 years of my life, which is when I left and went to France. And so I guess I would say I'm very fortunate because the roots are very strong. And there is a saying in India, and you say, water the roots and enjoy the fruits. So it is very important, I think, to have strong roots. And from roots, I mean the kind of pillars, moral, ethical, not religious, but just the fundamentals of, that when it becomes stormy or when it becomes windy, you don't get uprooted from, who you are or what you need to be. And as you weather the tough times, it makes you, and that's the saying in Czech, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So that's kind of the base. So I think I was very fortunate with my roots. And in as much as, it's difficult to say today whether I'm more Indian or more Czech, because I've spent over 30 years here. But deep down in my heart, in terms of some of those fundamental values, etc., I think I'm probably still Indian. Yeah.
But this is an interesting topic because, like most of the Indians are religious, right? It's Hinduism there, right? Okay. To what extent does actually the religion influence the people there, the way you behave, the culture you mentioned, and perhaps your family? Are you religious actually?
So I'd break it up into two parts. The first one is I generally don't like to generalize. But yes, there are generalizations, but I think people are different. Individuals are individuals. I was brought up, and Hinduism is treated as a religion, but it's more a philosophy of life, because there is not one book that you read. There is not, and you are free to either worship one of so many gods or not. And so from there, I go with the basic, I grew up with the philosophy that religion is only a means to a goal. And when that means becomes a goal in itself, this is where all the interreligion, whatever problems come up, because, this is my world as opposed to this is your world. But if we look at it really globally, we have a lot more similarities than we have differences. Our differences are very, very small. And what we do is we spend most of our time thinking about those differences, whether it is male, female, black, white, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, one country, another country, etc., etc. But deep down, as human beings, we're all the same. And to me, the similarity is like if you have a wall and you have 99 bricks exactly in the perfect place, and one which is a little bit crooked. And now you have an option. You can either look at those 99 and be grateful. Wow, I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful. Or you can focus your whole life, time, and energy on that one brick, potentially under the pretext that if you don't correct that one brick, that how will you improve life, etc., etc. But if we look at ourselves, really, we are living on this one earth, which is part of this one solar system, which is a star amongst billions of stars. So we are really, in the functioning of the universe, a very, very small speck. And on the face of this earth, we have opinions and we have problems, which are, and I guess it's a question of how we look at who we are and what's the purpose and what really matters at the end. But again, these are all, kind of, so that is the kind of background I grew up with. So I was born a Hindu.
But let me interrupt you. Isn't it the way you think about it? Isn't it perhaps, isn't the reason the fact that actually Hinduism is one of the most kind of free religion? That, like you said, it's more a philosophy than a religion. But isn't, for example, Islam different in this respect?
I think when you have, whether you have Christianity or Islam or most, you have a book to follow. You have and there is a story behind the book, etc., etc. And the main goal is, it doesn't matter which religion. It's like if you want to go from here to Brno. Now, how important is it whether you take the plane or you take the train or you take a car or you walk or you go on your bike like you came today, right? Immaterial. At the end of the day, your destination is Brno. And as long as you're hitting Brno, why do we need to fight about what means of transport we will take? So it doesn't really matter which religion, because fundamentally all religions talk about love and all religions talk about, mutual respect and, those are the basics. And I think we should be able to understand that we are on the same boat, we have the same goal, and reconcile those, that one brick on the wall, kind of find common ground and move forward. So that's the kind of fundamentals with which I grew up. And I think I was fortunate to grow up in those. I could have, if I was born in a different background or structure or whatever, I could be, thinking differently. So I consider myself fortunate, and this is how I look at more. So I don't practice any religion. And some of my best friends come from all the other religions. So I think it's the person behind, it's the human being behind, as opposed to religion. And religion, as we know, with history, has very often been used as a power play, as et cetera. So used or misused or whatever you call it. But so that's kind of where I stand on religion, that yes, it's there, but it's like, you're wearing a T-shirt, I'm wearing a shirt. So should we go out and fight about it, or should we just say, "Hey, that's just what it is. Let's have a nice conversation." Exactly.
And your father, and do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have. We are just two brothers. So I have an older brother who's 9 years older to me, and we have a very, very close relationship. And my parents are no more. My father passed away 28 years ago, and my mother 11 years ago.
What did your father do?
He was working as a civilian in the Army headquarters as an administrative officer, and he started kind of right at the bottom. And he grew to different levels by his, so there was a very I grew up around a very tough work ethic, not by him telling me what I should be doing, but by me seeing what he was doing and how he was growing. And I think there is a saying, I'm sure you know, and everybody knows, I say, I hear not what you say because I see what you do. And I think, when we are dealing with children, and I have 4 of them, I think it's important to share and have that kind of conversation with them where you treat them as an individual. But I think they see what you do. And if you are not aligned in yourself, you are telling your kids something other than how you are behaving, and you want them to be honest. But the moment you find a chance, you say, can I go around this? Can I do this? Can I find a way? Can I, whatever it may be. I think that's something which comes back, and and this is what you also call in India. You call it karma. So that's it. It's what you do. But part of that is, of course, it starts with your thought process, and I don't think we can really be thinking something else, doing something else, and saying something else. Because I think our energy inside us is not aligned, and that would lead to, whatever you call it, not wellness, but, a different space. So.
Absolutely. Sanjiv, how the hell did you appear in the Czech Republic, in Prague? What was the story behind?
So this is a place where I say, especially, the business community that we work around with, and a lot of CEOs, and we like to think we have control. And many years ago, I was one of those control freaks. You need to control everything. But a series of coincidences.
Okay.
Serendipities. Fortunate coincidences.
Because you studied in France, right?
I was 24 when I left India. I was 19 when I graduated from college. I started my first job. I worked for 5 years. And then when I was 24, I went to France to do my master's in hospitality at Cornell-Essec, just outside of Paris in Cergy-Pontoise. It is called Institut de Management Hôtelier International. And after that, I worked there for a little while at the Meridian in Paris. Then I returned to India for a very short stint for Hyatt Regency, working in hotels. And then I got a job offer. And because I had all these student loans and everything else, I got a job offer in Africa, West Africa, Liberia, as general manager of a hotel. And they were offering a whole load of money that I didn't know at that time why they were offering it to me, but they were. And I couldn't say no. So I went to Africa for a little over 3 years.
They speak French in?
No, they don't. They don't. But they English.
English, okay.
Yeah. And Liberia was the only African country which was never colonized.
Okay.
And I think in 1843, it was the black slaves from the U.S. who sailed to Africa. And Liberia was where they landed, so it's called Liberia. Mm-hmm. And Monrovia, which is the capital of Liberia, is after President Monroe, who was then the president of the U.S. So when I went there in '87, the currency was the U.S. dollar and so on. So yes, and Liberia was also the, I think, CIA headquarters for Africa.
Okay, logically.
And then I took a sabbatical in 1990, where Central Europe was opening up. So I said, the Berlin Wall is coming down. So I went to Berlin. I did a couple of months of German intensive, and then I was, kind of looking at traveling around. My then girlfriend was Swedish. I'd met her in Liberia. And coincidentally, she got posted to Prague.
Okay.
And I was in Central Europe, and she was in Prague. So I spent more time in Prague, in Central Europe, as opposed to anywhere else. And then I kind of, decided to stay. 3 years later, as working for the embassy, she got her next posting. And 30 years later, I'm still here. And we started with a small cafe under the stairway in the National Museum called Cafe Museum. And that was on the 19th of May, 1991.
Yeah. So let's move on to Zátiší Group, actually. So it's 3 fine dining restaurants, Mlínec, Zátiší, and Polovinu, right?
Correct.
And then I guess a big part of your business is catering, right?
Correct.
But like you said, it actually started with a cafe.
Yes.
How you said you had studied actually hospitality before, so that was the reason. Also interested in food and gastronomy, etc. That was the reason. Was it something what you always kind of planned to do by yourself, or was it again a coincidence?
Well, a pretty early coincidence. Originally, when I was a kid getting out of school, I wanted to be an Air Force pilot.
As every kid.
But when I was 16, I had a pretty bad motorbike accident.
Okay.
And for some reason, I can't say why now, but I was always the youngest in my class. And I was very proud of that I'm younger than everybody else, but I can still do this and this and this, but again, vis-a-vis everybody who's older than me. And at that age, 16, I didn't want to miss a year because, and so looking at late admissions somewhere in the beginning of November, the only place I got admission to was a hotel school. So this is how I landed up in hospitality. And in hospitality, when you do hotels, you can either go on the hospitality side or the rooms division side or the food and beverage side. So I took the food and beverage side. And after my graduation from there, I actually worked in the Intercontinental kitchen, first as a trainee for 2 years and then as a sous chef. Like a cook. Okay. So 5 year, first 2 years as a trainee where I trained around management trainee. And then 3 years I spent as a chef. But that was in a previous life. This is 1981, 84. So you're looking at, 37 years ago? Yes. So I've been in the industry now for 45 years.
I see. So back in 1991, setting up
1991, again, this was not a planned fine dining structure. So we were doing this cafe, and we opened in May. And in June, Engineer Przyrovsky came to me in the cafe, and he said, "Listen, Sanjiv, we like what you do here very much. And we are just getting our building back." And with his broken English and my broken Czech, and there is a restaurant on the ground floor, and it is operated by Restauratér jídelní Praha 1, Raj Praha 1. Would you be interested? So we said, okay. And that was the start of Zátiší, and because that was the first restaurant in Tento, Zátiší Group. And then we went on to Parnas and, Avalon, Circle Line. And we did a whole bunch of creative concepts. Avalon was the first kind of American-style Planet Hollywood, TGI Friday kind of, burgers and
that was the beginning
brunches. That was 1995. So in between there was other Parnas, Modera. So we went to, in 1995, Circle Line was the first French brasserie with fresh seafood on ice and so on. And the first one with only girls in the service and in the team, also in the kitchen. Really? With a chef, lady chef and a lady manager. I say lady, but basically girls. I think there was a couple of exceptions in the kitchen who were guys, but yeah. And then we came to 1995, 96, when we had 8 restaurants in Prague. And we went to, and then just from one thing to the other, people said, okay, we have 40 people here, we have 20 people here. So in 97, we launched the catering, initially as Blue Moon Catering. And then in 98, we changed it to Zátiší Catering. And then in 2002, we had the floods in Prague. Mm-hmm. And we had everything underwater.
Really?
And as you know, as a CFO, very often you get these, expense bills and you say, here is the insurance. And you keep trimming it down to optimize expenses. And we realized we were poorly covered.
But that's usually with the insurance, I have never experienced an insurance which covers actually what happens to in reality. That's why I hate insurance. So it wasn't covered.
And so then we had to make a kind of a choice between, which ones we can actually renovate and continue. So we kind of, in 2002, we made a strategic decision to stay on this side of the river. And this is where we came down to 3 restaurants as opposed to the original. Mlinec now was originally opened in 95 as Corona Bar Latino Cafe, where we had, it was more a bar with tapas and salsa, merengue, and, all those things. So we experimented with a lot of different things. Catering in 97, 98, our biggest experience came from the International Monetary Fund, where I still don't know how, but we actually served about 11,500 fine dining meals in 3.5 days. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Chase Manhattan, Arab Banking Corporation, Citibank, one after the other, all fine dining. And we actually had one of the restaurants, or 2 of the restaurants closed. And we had tables there. And we had mattresses behind the tables. So the team was working. When they were tired, they slept. Then they went down, had a shower, came back, and they were, because that was the only, when we signed up, we did the tastings, everybody wanted to work with us. And we did probably 90% of the private, the non-official business. Then we did in 2002 the NATO conference, where we did for the first time after 1832, I think, there was a dinner hosted in the Vladislavsky Sal. This was 3 months after the floods in Prague. This is November 21st and 22nd of 2002. So the White House press conference was in Mlinec on November 21st, and November 22nd was the NATO dinner. And then we had a president's only dinner. So that evening, we had 744 people in the Vladislavsky Sal, including 44 heads of state. And the kitchen was in the courtyard of the, and we were a 3-year-old
that's unbelievable
caterer. What happened? Everything was finely tuned, and we had all the people working, and everything was rehearsed X number of times. Fantastic. Now we had 89 minutes to serve the meal. And they had a concert in the Spanish Hall, and then everybody was supposed to get to the Vladislavsky Sal. Now, when everybody goes and actually uses that one stairway, and there is security of 44 heads of state, they realized that the half an hour they had planned doesn't get everybody through. So it took an hour. So now we had a 4-course meal coming from a courtyard kitchen. All the people there, including the 44. So one table was President Chirac, President Bush, and President Havel. It was also kind of the farewell for President Havel. And we were left with something like 58.5 minutes to serve that 4-course meal when everybody was settled. Now, there is an unwritten rule that President Bush always leaves at 10 o'clock, no matter what is happening. And President Chirac, because he is not less important, normally leaves 3 or 5 minutes before that. So we had to stick to that 58-minute schedule exactly. And there was, in the end, with dessert, a show specially created by Václav Marhal in Barandov for that event and for this big happening in Prague. So again, I don't know how it happened.
Who made it?
The team made it. How they did, what they did, with everything that was trained for 89 minutes. And this is kind of where I say that quite often, that, you don't need a very experienced heart surgeon for every single heart surgery or brain surgery. But when everything goes wrong, then that's the guy who can save your life.
I see.
So that was catering. And then we came to the crisis in 2008. And fine dining, top-end catering, everybody cut everything. So our revenues dropped like more than 40% overnight. And we didn't know what to do next. So this is where we created the Fresh and Tasty division with two ideas, kind of our low-cost division, to try and...
That's only catering, right?
That's what we call contract catering. So that's the cafeterias and the canteens, and so we just don't call it that. We cater to 7 of the 8 international schools. So we feed about 3.5, or we were feeding before COVID, 3,500 children in Prague every day. And then another 3,500 corporates in Google, Microsoft, Live Sports, Skanska, Cooperativa, Radio Free Europe, et cetera, et cetera. So that became then kind of, and the idea was twofold. We said, let's disrupt our own catering business, by creating something which will compete with at a different price level, and it'll always also take away some of the price competition on the catering, because we were on the higher added value and the more high touch kind of space. So that's kind of, and when we came to 2019, we were serving over 7,000 people every day in the Fresh and Tasty division, then another 1,500 or so in the catering division, whereas restaurants made up only about 550 or something average per day for the whole year. So the core kind of shifted from fine dining to the other spaces. In terms of revenues, catering was the largest revenue earner in 2019, but also in 2020, this is where we took the biggest hit, where revenues dropped by, are you ready? Over 90%. Yeah, because it came to a halt, basically.
We'll come to that, because that's one of the topics I wanted to discuss with you, obviously. But before we come to that, let me just say, Sanjiv, that this is a true success story. It's unbelievable what you reached. It's really spectacular. But one more question. How long did it actually take to recover from the crisis 2008, 2009? How long did it take to get back to the former numbers?
Whoa. I am not sure I have the data in the back of my head right now, clearly. What did help us was we had the EU presidency in 2009. So on the catering side, that helped us a lot, because we did a lot of things.
I was part of that team, by the way.
Okay. Small world. Prague is a little small
So I
village.
enjoyed your food as well.
And I guess probably somewhere around 12, 13. It took us a while to get back, but this is where, the growth came from the lower price, and the others kind of caught up back with it. Yes.
So
when you say, in terms of, I would say, and this is again, it's maybe, I think we were very lucky. We have a phenomenal team. And at least I don't think that I can, and maybe there are specialists who can, so I don't want to, in a half an hour or a 45-minute interview, figure out what somebody is going to be doing in a year or two. And, so very lucky on that front, very fortunate. So we had a lot of people that were with us 10, 15, 20, 25, even now, like 30 years. And that has to, this is again serendipity. Did I have control over this? No. Were we in the restaurant business? Yes. Did we trust people? 500%. I have a story. Everybody was saying, okay, you're in the restaurant business. Aren't people stealing? I said, no. So how do you know? I said, because I trust them. We didn't have inventories in our bar. We would have a sheet of paper and, you worked hard. And what we were doing was a lot of hard work. It was not easy. But at the end of the day, you sit down and you say, oh, fantastic job. And if you want to have a rum and coke or you want to have a beer, just mark it there so that, and that was it. So nobody was trying to get anything out or, and if I looked at the reservation book, I looked at the revenues. There's never a 100% guarantee of anything. I didn't need to go back and check. And I fundamentally found it difficult to have somebody working with me in the team and say, yeah, we are going to work in the same team, but I don't trust you. I'm going to have controls over you. So just philosophically, that's a space. And not to say later on, I have sometimes paid a higher price for that. But I think the fundamentals are there. So this is where I think as we go into the future, the hiring process has to be in a space where we are hiring for the values and for the attitude. Skill sets in our business, I don't think it's brain surgery or, rocket science. We can teach and people can, giving a smile, genuinely wanting to help and serve. That's something, is more difficult to artificially train. But how to do what from the right and left, I think those are semantics and nobody really cares today.
Every successful CEO always keeps saying that it's about a team, and I can fully agree with that. But the thing is that, in my opinion, that is true. You are only as strong as your team is. And as soon as you realize that, you fight hard for having the best team, and that moves you forward.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I must say that in your restaurant business, it's much harder. It is. Let's agree on that. I have a couple of friends who are active in the restaurant business, and honestly, cheating, especially the 90s and the beginning of this century, people there, or it was pretty normal there to cheat to a certain extent. So how did you actually achieve the fact, or maybe was it like the way that you trusted the people maybe influenced them that they, while being trusted, they didn't want to cheat you? Was it the reason why you perhaps were not cheated, or you just closed your eyes and you know that perhaps to a certain extent you were cheated, but ultimately at the end of the day the bottom line was okay, so you tolerated that?
Listen, this is where your fundamentals or your belief, because I even today believe that if I don't trust somebody, it's difficult for me to have in on the team. Yeah, so trust is a very fundamental thing that we need to create. But as you grow, you need to have the trust, but you need to have also the systems in place that kind of verify the trust. Again, I don't know, call it karma, call it whatever. I got lucky. I had people that we could work with, we could trust, they could trust us, and we worked with, with the team. You had a conversation. At the end of the conversation, you said something, and it was done on both sides. And that worked. And then as the team gets bigger, some of these things are tougher to, and like you were talking about, family or team. And I guess we need to, as we go forward, become more of a team rather than a family. So we kind of grew up more as a family. And as we go, we need to convert that. So I'm going to, learn some lessons from
knowing
you there.
Sanjiv, it's going to be hard for you. Really, a success story, unbelievable. So you ended up, before COVID, We will come to that. But I read somewhere that you ended up having some 380 people or something like that.
We were at, I think, 368 full-time. And of course, in catering, etc., you use a lot of people who are not full-time, but that kind of worked more or less only for us in their spare time. So students and others. Probably another 200. Yeah. So 368 full-time before COVID, and 219, let us say.
And financially, what were the revenues and what
little over 700 million.
700 million yearly, the revenues. And what was left?
So last year, we closed a little over 200 million. So,
EBITDA or profit?
No, revenues.
No, I mean before COVID. I meant what was left. I didn't mean the COVID time. We will come to that. Okay. I meant what was left in your pocket.
Yeah, we were running around in the range of about 10%.
10%
EBITDA. Yeah.
EBITDA margin.
And after COVID, we had a $500 million hit on revenue.
Let's discuss that. Yes.
EBITDA was negative, last year.
COVID came.
Yes.
A year ago, a little bit more.
Yeah. 15 and a half, 16 months ago, to be precise.
And everybody knows that the restaurant business was hit, or it is one of the most hit markets, actually, besides hospitality. But still, there is big differences, because it's different when you have a pizza place or a burger place where actually switching to home delivery is not that hard, or a restaurant which is focused on locals. But when the borders closed, and your fine dining restaurants in the middle of Prague, I guess having over 90% of foreigners as guests, and being focused on catering when actually all the events were cancelled, I think your business must have been hit harder than anybody else.
Yes.
So what was the hit?
So that was kind of, and I always say life can only be used in two spaces, opportunity or opportunity to learn. So the fact that we were in our restaurants doing a lot of business, like business people were negotiating contracts, signing contracts, having different meetings, etc., etc.
I can agree with that. I've had really important business meetings in your restaurants, in all of three.
Okay. So Zátiší was a little over 50% local, which means Prague residents.
Okay.
And Bellevue was around 80%. 20% local, and 80% was important meetings with business travelers, etc., from everywhere. And Mlínec was in that range of about 10 to 15% local. So overall, yes, we were in that range of 70% traveling, and when that got cut off, and having the restaurants in the center of the city, which probably has somewhere between 12 and 13,000 Airbnb locations, which got cut off completely. So technically, locals would have to travel to the center to visit the restaurants. But on the other side, I think it was a huge opportunity for everybody in Prague to see the beauty of the center without all the visitors, which was very difficult to do, especially in months like May and June, etc. Right? So that willingness to travel to the center was not as good. And now we see that willingness is much more. So in a place where we were really worried, like Mlínec, we said, how will we get people there? How will we, etc., etc. I think, we are very pleasantly surprised that, there's 80, 90, 100 people coming for dinner every day. Brunches are sold out. And this is more than 90%, maybe 95% Prague residents, locals. So, which is phenomenal, because the opportunity of having a meal at the foot of the Charles Bridge in the historical center and being surrounded by everybody from the city, I think is unique. And I think people should, those who are not using it must use it as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. So now, after the restaurants were reopened a couple of weeks ago,
yes,
it looks good. I mean, the kind of the performance of the restaurants, because still there's no foreigners in Prague.
Yes.
So how does it look?
Well,
these
the
days,
foreigners that are resident in Prague are here, but the kind of ones that are traveling on business, etc., not yet there. Mlinec is, I'm very, very pleasantly surprised. Zátiší has been a little slower, but also good. And I think, again, we need to fill up the whole space. And I think that's an opportunity for us to, deal with this piece on, because our restaurants were considered more of a special occasion. You have a special business contract, you have a special something, you have a birthday, you have a graduation, you have a, you want to propose, you have a wedding anniversary, you would do those things. And to slowly take it to the space of, you can enjoy good food anytime. And it's time to celebrate, come back twice a week as opposed to, once a month or whatever. And I think that's the space we need to work on. So it's a work in progress, and hopefully we'll get there with the locals. And as we go into the future, the restaurants would be working maybe with 10%, 20% visitors, but with more,
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I believe it is exactly what's going to happen too. But anyway, back to the hit of COVID. The hit was unbelievable, like 90+% hit. You had to make half of your staff redundant, right? What were your thoughts at the very beginning when it all started? How did you manage to cope with that? Etc. If you recall the memories.
So listen, I am generally optimistic, and I was last year. And I was consistently wrong.
You were always more optimistic than reality was, right?
Yeah. So when it started, we said, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Then it went to 3 months. And then as we opened up in May, and as summer came, all the restaurants were packed. And it was sold out. So it was a good comeback. So we were getting ready to, so we let go a first round of a few people. And then we had to get to the second round of close downs.
The second and third wave, yeah.
And then we realized, oh my God. So, and everybody I spoke to, you still have so many people. What are you doing with them? Because all CEOs were kind of saying, okay, let's cut. But in the space that we were in, it was like Sophie's choice. Which one of your children do you, and some of those choices were really tough. You worked together 10, 15, 20 years. These are some of the best people in the industry. How do you just let go? And then we came to the space that we had to do a second round of, more let-offs. Mm. And normally, I think the rule. If it's good news, you can, dose it, dávkovat. If it's bad news, let it come one time. And in our case, we had to, but the way we were doing things, and we were more positive, we had to do the dávkování of the bad news. The first round, second round, and third round, which was not planned that way. And that was painful. That was very painful. And the team that works together as a team. And so it was painful for the team also, and I think a lot more painful for them than, if you're sitting in the office and making whatever decisions. So, it was a tough period.
But I know that although you are an unbelievably optimistic person and you always want or try to see the the positive part of everything. I know from you that this time was really hard for you, and that you actually came down to a kind of a burnout. Is it true?
Yeah, I did have this piece of, when we went into the third lockdown, which was on the 17th of December. And this was when we had opened, I think, on the 3rd of December, and we were open for 14 days. And then we didn't know what was going to happen. At that time, we didn't know what was going to happen on the 1st of January. If there would potentially be any subsidies available to us or not, or, et cetera, et cetera. And we had, given that we were optimistic, retained, even at that point in time, we still had over 200 people with us full time. And suddenly your revenue stream dries out. So I must admit, I kind of spiraled on the negative side for the first time in my life. And I kind of went into a depression in January and part of February. But thank God that's behind me. But I realized what I did was all cooked up in my head. All the negative stuff that I did, it was all in my head. The reality was different. And as I woke up to the reality, and I said, listen, and the other thing that came out to me very clearly was, I have to be here for my team. If I am, lying somewhere and not going out, not doing anything, not with the team on the front, then that's going to be much worse for the team. So that is when I kind of was able to pull myself out of this with a lot of help from some very good and close friends. And I think, Heureka played a very, very important and critical role in there. And there was a lot of others who came in kind of to support and help do that. And yeah, from there, I guess as we go, we are now maybe 160 people, and we are hiring full blast. We don't have people. On Monday, we are sold out with our catering to the end of the month. July and August, hopefully, if things turn out like we see right now, would be some of the best July, August we have done. September looks very good. This Monday, we need another 120 people because...
Are they available on the market?
They're not.
They're not.
They're not.
They left to
we were doing some work with the ready to heat and and there is some packaging and other things. So we were doing it with our full-time people, and we said, okay, when it gets to that, then we will use our full-time people what they really are trained to do, and then we will get some part-time help. But there's no part-time help available. So I'm sure we'll get there, but everybody's working. I'm working on Monday. Everybody, the whole team, all of the admin and the back office, everybody's working. And that's an opportunity for do more team building, and everybody who sits in the office also sees what it is to be in operations and what it is like to be standing on your feet for 12 hours and then finishing at, 1 or 2 in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. So I think all these are opportunities to learn and grow.
Sanjiv, let me get back to the depression. So, because I think this is something what many people experience in their work lifetime. I mean, so you said that it was your friends who helped you, or did you also go to a doctor to help you? How long did it take? And
yeah, I did go to. I went a couple of visits to a doctor's.
Psychologist.
Yeah. One I visited twice and one I visited once. And in my conversations there, I realized the two sides of the coin, right? One side is you're visiting a psychologist, but the message you are giving yourself when you're visiting a psychologist is, I can't handle this by myself. I need a psychologist to pull me out. And that message just didn't land well with me, because deep inside, I knew that I had to do this. Yes, I can get help from here and there, but that thing of, and help from friends is different from help from I'm seeing a psychologist, I'm seeing a friend. Like, we can have a conversation and you could be helping me. And there, at the back of your mind is and say, okay, I need to get the help of us. So that was that. So good or bad, I don't know. Yeah. But that's where it came from. And that is where, from inside, I said, listen, I have to get up and do what needs to be done. And there was all the help available, but the getting up had to be done by me. And I kind of internally did not reconcile with going to a psychologist, because I'd never been in that space. To me, it was like a discovery of myself, something I'd never seen before. And I was shocked because I was talking to people, guiding them, coaching them, doing different stuff where, bad stuff happens. It's the way you look at it, et cetera, et cetera. It's your perspective. And suddenly I found myself going there. So yeah, it was a huge learning for me. And I'm grateful for that I went through it when I went through it. And I saw another side, and I saw the sides that are going forward. I think I am that much the better today. And if I was to roll it back and run it again, I would not run it any differently. Mm. Mm. And I don't know if that kind of answers your...
Yeah, I mean, it's seriously, it's nothing to be ashamed of to go to a psychologist. And like you said, you have to recover yourself, but a psychologist is just like a tool which helps you get it from inside, and get out of that. So I think it's a learning which we all should take, that it's no shame to go to a psychologist. If you're really down, let's do it. Let's do it. And it's not for the first time I'm hearing this.
Yeah. And I would totally agree with you on that. And I'm not preaching, don't go to it. My internal conversation was, I'm not sick. I can handle this. And I was able to. And, so that's kind of, that was my space, but totally with you on the other one. Yeah. No shame. Yeah, absolutely.
Last point about the COVID. So financially, maybe let me start differently. You are well known for your approach to charity, to CSR. And a couple of years ago, you actually publicly committed yourself to devote 50% of your profit to the charity. That's something unique. And I would like to speak about it with you. What drives you? What made you decide, etc. Because this is the reason why you are inspiring people and why I admire you that much. But before we come to that, back to COVID. The Czech Minister of Treasury, Alena Schillerová, after the COVID started, she said something like, you all should have created the money pillows, the reserves, but contributing 50% of your profit to charity. I'm wondering if you had actually created the reserves, how you financially managed to survive, what kind of dotation, the subsidies, you got from the state, if the banks helped you, etc. So, how did it look from in this perspective?
Listen, I grew up in a atmosphere where 10% of whatever came into the household was simply shared by people who needed more. And to give you reference to context, and of course the purchase power is different, but when I look at both my parents working, and if one of them was not working, I could not attend the school I was attending. And I think, you can't really convert it in today's terms, but when we go back 40, 50 years, you're looking at $20 each in terms of monthly salary. But, and there were, tough decisions on what we can and cannot afford and what
having
we can
kids,
do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that 10% was always earmarked. So that's kind of something that I grew up with. You can say it was part of my DNA or genes or whatever. And that 10% always stayed with me. And then as we started to grow the business, we said, 10 can go to 20 and 20 can go to, and then many years ago with a couple of other similar-minded colleagues, CEOs, etc., we tried to look at the example of the pledge in the U.S. with Warren Buffett, and on a very different scale, where we said, let's start something here. And so can we commit 50% of, our assets and whatever to philanthropy? And I call it sustainable philanthropy, not so much charity, but yeah, it's that. And then that somehow, for some reason, didn't work out. And I said, listen, I don't necessarily have to have another 7 people with me to do what I want to do. And I can just do it myself. So I basically said, listen, I would, and this was whatever, 8, 9, 10 years. We were at that point in time probably at about 30 or 35%. So I said, listen, I commit to at least 50% of what we make to go into philanthropy. And we kind of split that 80-20. 80 was nearby, and which was in our surroundings. So, and we worked with Dobrý Anděl and Člověk v tísni and Nadat Sevilla, and, and 80% was empowering the poorest women in the remotest areas, Africa, Asia, etc. So that's kind of, and we set up a trust to do that. And so that's kind of the background. And, what you say is, this question came to me very often. I mean, we were fortunate. Okay, we did have some reserves. We were, profitable for many years before this came. And everybody in our industry was probably not that fortunate. And even after doing the 50% bit, we could have had more. But, and in some of the groups we are in, you very often amongst CEOs, you get asked the question, so what about your investments? And there's a lot of people for the last 20 years that follow me, okay, what is your investment portfolio and so on. So I am probably the only person who does not have an investment portfolio. And they're like, seriously? And how do you? And I say, listen, my investment is in those women and those kids that we help. And I don't think you can come up with a better investment portfolio than that, in my perception, which is not to say this is the investment. Everybody has their own perception, and this is my perception of my investment portfolio, and everything outside of Zátiší went there. So, and yes, I faced the same question from a lot of my teammates, where we had reserves, but we had to take some tough decisions, and we didn't have reserves as we could have had based on how we were doing before. I think when we were doing those Sophia's Choice decisions, it was not an easy question to answer. And I understand that. But deep down in my heart, if I make those choices even today and go back, those individual kids that you're providing a hot meal to, and if you're serving 20,000 kids and they go to school because that is the only hot meal they will get, and they get educated and they build a future, or at least have the, maybe not equal opportunity, but at least some opportunity to do something in the future, I think the balance is quite, and going further, yes, we have to do all, and nobody anticipated, a 15-month run. I don't know if anybody was prepared, especially in a business where you get hit 90% in restaurants, 90% in catering, which was our largest revenue earner, 75% in restaurants, and then, over 50% in the cafeterias and the canteens. Schools were closed. Home office became the norm. They nearly shut the canteens.
And it took a year.
And it took 15 months.
15 months.
To start coming back. Your revenue stream just dries up. And so that's, it's something that we went through. It was a tough lesson. But if I take it back to the values and back to the fundamentals, if in the future I would have a chance to put 10 million crowns here aside for a rainy day, maybe it comes or maybe it doesn't, or I would have the opportunity of today, here and now, the fact of the matter is the world we live in today, we have just, with this crisis, pushed about 600 or 700 million people below the poverty line. We have just moved that back to somewhere in the 1990s. And I don't have, the fact of the matter is, even today in 2021, what we call the cutting edge, high-tech 21st century, where we have practically everything in our bubble, there is more than 8 million children below the age of 5 that die because of preventable diseases. There is more than 500-600 million people every day that go to bed hungry. So those are the realities. We live in our own bubble and we are safe and secure. And there's an old saying in English. I was crying because I had no shoes till I saw a boy who had no feet. I would say till I saw a boy who had no legs and no arms, maybe, So it's a perspective, and there is no right or wrong here. It's the way we look at the world we live in, and just because we don't see something, does it mean it doesn't exist? And the media that we look at, and how it is portraying a perspective of the reality. And I think the reality is a lot more positive than it is portrayed in the media. And that creates a mindset. And is that mindset that of opportunity and opportunity to learn? Or is that mindset that of fear? And, but there is a lot of, money to be made on that fear psychosis. There's a lot of politics that runs around, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know right or wrong, but I guess everybody takes those spaces by them. And I think if we look at humanity as humanity as a religion above any other religion, can we close our eyes to those parents? We all have kids who are not able to feed their 6-month-old or 2-year-old, or maybe have to lose a child because there is no food. And we say, okay, let's make some more money and make some more. But again, there is no right or wrong there. Everybody does their own piece in their own space. And yeah.
I think people tend to close their eyes. It's better not to see it than to see it and sacrifice, or not sacrifice, and suffer from seeing it. But I think, Sanjiv, this is a really nice end of our conversation. This is exactly what like I said, why I admire you. And I think it's a big challenge to all of us. In Czech we say hozená rukavice. To all of us to kind of think if we are doing enough for in this whole area, in this respect, if perhaps we couldn't do more, if perhaps we couldn't give more to the charity, etc. And I take it personally as well. Thank you very much for saying it all out and guiding us through the experience of COVID, through your own personal experience and the depression you suffered, etc. Before I say goodbye, let me speak a little bit Czech to our listeners. Přátelé, já myslím, že to bylo hrozně fajn povídání se Sanjivem. Já jsem ale klasicky vám chtěl poděkovat za přízeň samozřejmě a jak už to vždycky říkám, inspirovat vás k tomu, aby pokud se vám náš podcast líbí, abyste mi ho pomohli dostat mezi víc lidí. Myslím si, že rozhovory, jako jsme měli dnes, by se měly dostat k co nejvíc lidem. Takže prostě dejte follow, dejte odebírat a řekněte o podcastu svým kamarádům a známým, tweetněte o tom, napište o tom na LinkedInu. Dejte mi feedback, jsem na LinkedInu, na Twitteru, na mailu tomas.braverman@heureka.cz, takže budu vám za to vděčný. No a ještě jsem chtěl říct poslední věc, pokud jste neslyšeli všechny naše díly, kterých máme teď, myslím, 24, tak určitě si je poslechněte, protože všechny jsou relevantní, všechny vlastně vypovídají o silných příbězích lidí, ať už z biznisového prostředí, nebo jsme tady právě i měli jako hosta Tomáše Šepka, známého chirurga, nebo Tomáše Vyhnálka právě z Člověka v tísni, což je jedna z organizací, kterou je Sanjiv podporuje a myslím si, že to je jedna skvělá organizace a vyprávěl tady Tomáš Vyhnálek, který vyprávěl o strašně zajímavých věcech, co prožil ve válce, nebo vyprávěl, co dokážou fake news v Rusku, v Africe a myslím si, že pokud vás tenhle díl bavil, tak si a neslyšeli jste ještě díl s Tomášem Vyhnálkem, tak se určitě poslechněte. Kvalita audia není nic moc, ještě tehdy jsme to nenatáčeli tady v Profi Studiu, tak za to se omlouvám, ale já myslím, že ten obsah stojí za to. Takže to je to, co jsem vám chtěl říct. A Sanjive, jak se to češtině skloňuje, Sanjive.
Ano.
Díky moc, že jsi přišel, bylo to fantastický, přeju ti, ať už těch 15 měsíců prostě, ať je to všechno za náma. A to teda přeju nám všem. A ať už prostě se vyplní to, co všichni doufáme, že prostě COVID is over and I hope it is over and I believe it is over. Although I tend to be the same optimistic fool like you are.
Jo. Děkuji moc za to příležitost a já jsem optimistický a na ten, jak bych to nazval, nový, respektive doufám, better normal.
After COVID.
My hodně budeme, hlavně na náš obor, otočit ty myšlenky a být víc agile, jako vy už jste, tak doufíme, my budeme popovídat víc a učíme se různý věci od vás.
No, ale teda to je dost téma, na který jsem se tě chtěl zeptat a zapomněl jsem na to, ale mi se jako vlastně hrozně líbilo ten koncept food delivery, který jako v Zátiší děláte, že vlastně nedoručujete jako ohřát jídlo, ale vlastně jídlo s přesným popisem toho, jak si to máš ohřát. A to je super, to jsem párkrát využil a člověk pak je doma za profíka. Jo, a ještě se to dá udělat, nikoho k tomu nenabádám, ale dá se to udělat jako, že jste to vařili sami, ale je to fine dining. Tak to je super, tak to jsem chtěl říct ještě divákům. To určitě je to na Zátiší, jak je ten web váš, Zátiší rozvoz.cz.
Ale to potřebujeme rozšířit, to potřebujeme, abych víc lidí ochutnali a víc objednali.
No. A hlavně teď máte málo lidí, tak, abyste uspokojili tu velkou poptávku. Tak přeju ti a celému Zátiší, aby se dařilo a ještě jednou díky, že jsi přišel.
Děkuji moc, Tomáš. Děkuji.
Ahoj.
Ahoj.